G'day, my name's Dave and I'm from Tombstone Trapping. I'm going to do a little pig trapping tutorial for you all, and the motivation behind that is a lot of my clients have told me that they were pretty much in the dark until I came along, and they've encouraged me to share my experience and my knowledge with the broader community to help you control feral pigs. I don't care if you're a landholder or another contractor. If I can teach you something, then I'm really happy to do that. But I'll do my best to teach you my method that I've developed over a number of years that almost always gives 100% reduction. It's a pretty straightforward method, and I've found that it works really well for me because I've done it for so long. But when I explain it to other people, or when other people ring me and they say, oh, I've got pigs and they won't go into my trap, and I talk them through my procedure, it becomes abundantly clear to me then at how much misinformation is out there, how many people are doing the wrong thing, and therefore the results are not there. Trapping gets a bad reputation and they end up resorting to other techniques that I'm not in favour of. So all that combined, I just really want to walk you through a program. I've just started a pig trapping program now, so it's perfect timing. And I want to take you on the journey with me right through it. And I want to do a really comprehensive video where we go from the very beginning right through to the very end. We'll talk about the bait type, how we make up the bait or the free feed, the trap design, where we actually put the free feed in the first place, why we put it there, introducing the trap at the right time, how long the whole time frame is expected to take. Generally it's around about 7 to 10 days from the very first lot of grain that you put out to lure the pigs to that area up until the final pig is caught. Righto, so the bait type that I use for pig trapping is whole barley or feed wheat. There's many other options out there. Most of them will fail at some point. Barley and wheat just seem to work all the time. I've never had a failure with either one of them, but make sure you get whole barley, all right? So be generous with your grain. This is the cheapest part of trapping pigs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make up a bucket of grain for you now, a bucket of feed, and then we'll go and put that out. There's my whole bag of grain going in there. Now I'm going to get the hose and I'll fill that up with water. Always better to be too wet than too dry. You definitely don't want to be feeding pigs dry grain. If you feed them dry grain, they'll actually swell up in their stomach, make them crook, and then you'll never get them back on grain again. So ideally, better to be too wet. Make sure that that is underwater for at least 24, 48 hours. Okay, mate? So, yeah, like I said, better to be too wet. If you've got too much water in it, that'll just soak into the ground when you put it out. If it's too dry, or if you let it dry out at home, it'll start to germinate, it'll start to ferment, it'll go off, and you just want to get pigs onto it. So keep it underwater. Another thing I like to add is a bit of molasses. I always put that in there to start them off. Once you get them feeding, you know, it's negotiable whether you continue with that, but I like to. I don't like to change anything once I've got pigs feeding, but that's a good little insurance thing. How much to put in? Well, I don't measure it. I just tip a bit in like so as it's filling up with water. I don't know what we're doing there, maybe half a coffee cup or something like that. That'll do. Grab a stick, stir it in as you go. And like I said, keep that full to the brim. If you're using a bucket, only probably 2/3 fill your bucket, because if you put more than that in there and you put the lid on, when that grain expands, it'll pop the lid off, you'll turn up in the morning and your shed floor will be covered in grain. So 2/3 fill a bucket. You saw I had that tub there about 2/3 full. I'll now fill it to the brim with water, allow that grain to soak all that water up, and then pigs can eat as much of that as they want, and when their tummy's full, they're full. Like I said, if you feed them dry grain, they'll fill up on dry grain, then they'll expand inside them with the body fluids and whatnot, make them crook as anything, you won't get them back on grain. So don't make the mistake of dry grain, please. Righto. Right, so there's a bucket I made up a couple of days ago. You can see the colour of it. It's absorbed the molasses and the water. Nice and wet. Alright, but you don't want to let it get any drier than that. If I wasn't going to put that out today, I'd top that up with water again, but that's going out in about half an hour, so I won't worry about it. Compare it with that. Righto, and that's what that'll look like in a couple of days. It'll be swelled up, absorbed all that water, perfect. Just what we want for pigs. So when I'm looking for somewhere to put the grain, I'm looking for a natural funnel, somewhere where animals are just going to naturally be drawn into that area. Quite often that involves gullies and a junction of gullies, and that's what I've got here. So there's this big main gully that comes down this way, and then there's another one with a heap of cover in it, a heap of blackberries and hawthorns and whatnot, and they come down, they meet just here at this point, and then that continues on, and it's a real highway, if you like, for animals to follow these gullies along. And then from that you're looking for a spot suitable to put a trap first and foremost, because you've got to think, no point feeding pigs where you can't put a trap. You've got to feed them where you can get a trap there. So then when I've identified this spot in the paddock I'm in, it's sort of fairly rough just down in there over the edge of that hill. Pigs are not really likely to travel that. Then you just get up off the creek a little bit, and there's a nice little flat area here, and then there's a fence. So I've just got a little corridor in there about 10 metres wide, and that's a perfect spot for animals to travel, and they'll be sort of tucked in there because that fence will keep them in and the creek will keep them in. So that's an ideal spot to feed pigs. So that's one spot that I've chosen. The other spot that I've chosen is over at the foot of that hill over there. There's a nice little flat spot just in there, and ideal for putting a pig trap in there. So we'll go and have a look at that, and then I'll get up on that hill and I'll give you a bit more of an elevated view, so you get a bit more of an understanding of the terrain and the topography that I'm dealing with, and why I've chosen the spots that I have. So a spot like this would be ideal. You can see I've got a real prominent game trail that runs down along there that animals are using, all kinds of animals, livestock and wild animals. Nice little flat area here, bordered by a heap of rough country, so pigs would definitely be coming up and down that track, there's no doubt. So that would be an area that I would be looking at. You've also got a creek crossing here, like a vehicle creek crossing, and animals will readily use them. So you know, you get pigs coming from that side of the creek coming across there, picking up that game trail. That's one area that I would identify. Only thing I don't like about that is that it's fairly open, and I think if I go on the other side of the creek, I can sort of tuck a trap in over there. It's a bit more private, and pigs would probably be more comfortable just tucked in behind all that crap there that's in front of me. And again, here's a nice little spot. It's tucked in here, it's sort of sheltered. There's a bit of cover, you can blend a trap in a spot like this here, and there's a real good game trail just comes around there that the animals are using a lot. There's a lot of pig footprints and whatnot on that, so I'll find a little spot in here, I'll blend a trap in, or I'll start feeding in here, and then down the track we'll potentially put a trap in here, see how we go. So here's an elevated view looking down on where we just were. Like I said, you've got that gully coming down there, carries on, and then around here you've got that patch of hawthorn trees and heavy cover on the side of that hill, and that little flat spot just down in there is where I've chosen as a likely spot for a pig trap. The other feed station that I have near the fence line is over on that flat over there, but you can see how everything all sort of funnels into that one spot, and that's why I've chosen that. It's sort of like it's a natural funnel for animals to be drawn in there, and they do traditionally run creek lines and whatnot, more so than ridges. I mean, they do come up on the sides of the hills. All this hill that I'm standing on has all been turned over and dug up, but they're not going to be living up on the bare open hill like this. They come up on here of a night, but they'd be living down in that creek, and they'd be travelling that creek quite a lot. So traditionally I do like creek lines for feeding pigs with a view to trapping them. sometimes on the side of a hill like that there's a little basin. It probably doesn't show up much here, but in there's a little basin, and around there's a patch of bracken fern and whatnot, and there's a nice little flat plateau in there. I mean, they'd be all right, but I still would prefer a creek line over high on a hill. I think creek lines, your trap is really going to be effective sort of 24 hours a day. Pigs will be up and down that creek all day. Get higher on these more exposed hills and you're virtually limiting your trapping window to just night time. So just bear that in mind. Like I said, pick your feed spot, make sure you can get a trap there to start with, and then persevere and get your pigs feeding and carry on from there. Another tip that I'll just share with you too is that a lot of people confuse pig digging with actually damage done by crows. You probably hear that crow calling in the background there, and you'll be amazed at the size of the clod of dirt that crows can turn over. So the golden rule for me anyway is always have a look at the damage, have a good inspection in there, and you will, if it's pigs, you will find a pig footprint. Now, there's one in there. I don't know if you can see that very well, but there's a pig footprint there. There's another one there. There's pig footprints there. There's a better one in there for you. So obviously if it's crows doing the damage, they don't leave footprints like that. Whereas pigs always walk through their diggings and they'll always leave you a footprint. Here's some good footprints in here. Like if you look at them. Look at that one. There, nice one in there. Another one in there. So before you go getting too carried away putting your grain out, always pays to make sure that you've definitely got pigs, because a lot of people put grain out and doesn't get taken. They don't understand why, and it's actually crows that have turned the dirt. And you might think that's very obvious that that's pig digging, but I tell you now, I've been to jobs where crows have turned dirt just like that. So make sure you're actually chasing a pig before you start putting your grain out. Righto, so I put grain out here Friday afternoon, checked it Saturday, it was all gone. Put more grain out Saturday afternoon, it was all gone. Here we are Sunday, I'm back again. You can see the trail, pretty obvious where the pigs have been feeding, and you'll always know that it's pigs when there's not one bit of grain left there. Have a look in there, you'll also see pig footprints in here probably. Like there's little pig footprints there, so I know I've got a piglet there. There'll probably be, there's one a bit bigger, so that might be mum. And in the paddock next door, I know I've got boar footprints over there, and there's big boar poo about. So I know I've got multiple pigs here, but that's what you look for. When you're feeding your pigs, I've just run a trail out like that. Now the reason I put it out in a trail and not in one pile is that, one, the pig's running out there 10 metres off the fence and I've got a pile on the fence, you might miss it, and vice versa. So by running the trail out, I've got a bigger target area for the pig to actually find that grain to start with. Add to that, you've got multiple pigs and you've got a dominant feeder. You can't hog the pile and keep the others away. They can all spread out here and they can all get a feed. So what we end up with is we get the whole mob lined out feeding. And that's critical for later on when we come to trapping, because that's how we want them to feed in the trap. We want them to all fill up in the trap in a nice line and be comfortable around one another. And that's how we fill the trap up. But we'll get to that down the track. So I just thought I'd show you here why I've put the grain here, what to look for, and now I'm going to refill it, and then I'll give you another look at it when I tip it out. Now, like I said, you've got to be fairly generous. This is the cheapest part of trapping, is feeding the pigs. You've also got to be very committed. Like I said, we're Sunday afternoon. There's no point putting grain out once a week and coming back and thinking you're going to trap all the pigs, because they're not going to work. You might get a few, but you won't get the 100% that I'm predicting that I'm going to get, because I'm committed and I'm going to feed these pigs every single day probably 10 days or so, all up, and we'll have every pig out of the mop caught in 10 days. But a bare minimum is 3 days in a row, which they've now fed here. Friday night, Saturday night, they feed here tonight, that'll be 3 days in a row. That's a bare minimum before we bring a trap in. The biggest mistake everybody makes, they get pig diggings in the paddock, they bring a trap in, they put the grain in the trap, and they don't get any pigs going near it. Well, that's destined to fail before it begins. And if you're looking at it from a pig's point of view, it's like parking your car there and putting the grain on the floor in the car and wondering why they don't get in and eat it. It's a foreign object that they're not used to. What I'm doing here, I'm feeding the pigs first. I'm giving them a good experience here. Then when we bring the trap in, they've already been trained to feed here. So the trap is not so much of a balk. But if you look at it from a pig's point of view, they turn up and there's a thing in the paddock that's never been there before. They're not going to go near it. Not initially, they might after a month or so. So if you've got a pig trap that's been there forever, a permanent structure, yeah, they might, that's part of the furniture. But when you bring a trap in for the first time, it's not part of the furniture, and pigs will balk and they'll walk away from it. That's the biggest failure that most people make. Got to feed them first, minimum 3 days in a row before we bring the trap in. Now, if they feed 2 and then they miss a day, start again. All right? You've got to be patient. You have to be committed to the job. You've got to be here every day. You've got to be patient and you've got to persevere. If you can't do those 3 things, then you won't get 100%. But if you follow this method, you watch, we'll get 100% because we're going to do all of that. So anyway, another thing I've got, if I just turn that camera around, over on that hill, or the foot of that hill over there, there's a heap of hawthorn trees and there's a nice little flat area. Now that's in what we're going to call paddock number 3. It's only about 180 metres from where we're standing here. I know there's pig activity there. I've been putting grain there and it's been going as well. But we've got a fence line and a creek between here and there. Highly likely it's the same pigs, but possible that it's not. So I've got another grain pile going over there, which we'll go and check that in a minute. And I like to have 2 separate grain feeding areas going, so that if they get a bad experience on one, they might, and they decide to leave it, they might still go to the other one. Always good to have a second one up your sleeve. You don't have to put a trap over there if you don't want to, if you just want to concentrate on the one, but I always like to have 2 options, just a little bit of insurance. So now we'll go and put some grain over there and we'll look at that. Right, so here we are, we're at point number 2, my reserve spot, which may end up being a primary spot. Again, you can see the trail. I put grain here yesterday afternoon, all gone, the whole lot of it. Now, there's big footprints here all through the mud. You see a bit of cow poo and a few cows around. I can guarantee you cows didn't eat that grain because they don't get every single bit of it like pigs do. Pigs are great at hoovering up every little bit. So when it's all gone, you know you've got pigs. It's not cattle or birds or sheep or anything like that. Now, this may end up being my primary spot because it's tucked away in here. Like I can incorporate a trap into this bit of undergrowth, a few hawthorn trees, a bit of shade. Always got to be mindful of that. I think of just getting a habit of putting your trap in the shade. It's a good habit to get into. So I'm going to run another trail of grain out here. We run it out in the line. You can be as generous as you want to be. Another thing I like to do, bang the bucket and walk out of here, because the pigs will get used to hearing that noise. They'll soon join the dots. I'll relate that hollow banging of the bucket. They'll make that relationship between that noise and the grain being put out, and the camera will reveal that after a week of that, I'll bang the bucket, walk away, and within 10 minutes there'll be pigs here. The reason I chose this spot for my second lot of grain is because I've got a game trail that comes around the side of that hill there. Pigs are unlikely to be trotting around on the side of that rough rocky hill. There's a creek there, which is like a natural physical barrier. I know they go backwards and forwards through it, but they'll also run along it. You've got a real good game trail that comes out here. So when they come along that game trail, they pick up my grain, but I eventually want to get the trap in there. So that's why I've run the trail of grain back this way. That's to intercept them out there. And this is to lure them into here, where I'm going to put the trap. So eventually, on trap night, we won't have any of that grain out here. All the grain will be over here. But we've taught the pigs to come to where we want them to be when we want to trap them. Pretty important we do that. Monday, we put the grain out here yesterday afternoon. You see it's all gone. Another lot of pig activity, a lot of footprints on that trail. And you can see the footprints. I've got multiple pigs here, and I've got everything from piglets to boars to sows. I've got the whole lot. There's a bit of boar poo about, there's a bit of piglet poo about. So I'm going to put a camera out here as well. But I already know that what the dynamics of the mob are. And then on my other trap site, or my other feed site, which is just over the creek there, all that grain's gone as well. Now what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to put the trap over on the other side. I can just blend it in a bit better. I can tuck it in under that hill. It'll be a bit more private. Not going to get any interference. So I'm going to use that as my trap site. There are cattle in that paddock, but I'm hoping that they don't interfere with it too much. If they do, I can always come back over here, which is why I'm going to keep this grain pile here going just as a reserve. But anyway, apologies if you can hear the wind blowing. It's a horrific day. But I'm just going to put some more grain out here to keep this pile going, and then we'll go and set up the trap. Back at where I'm going to put my trap. Apologies about the wind. It's a horrendous day, as I said. Maybe a lot of noise, but anyway, not much I can do about that at the moment. I'm going to put the trap in here. I'm going to tuck it up in underneath that tree. That's the spot that I've chosen. It's nice and protected. It's sort of a bit more private. Out in that open paddock out there, pigs are feeding equally as well there. I've tracked the mob, and it's definitely the same mob of pigs, even though I don't have a camera to confirm it. Just my tracking, you can see where they've come from that pile over there, down across the creek, and then they're following a game trail that comes up here. It's the same mob for sure, and they're coming to this pile here. So I'm going to put the trap in here, and I'll set about putting that up, and then I'll do a little video and talk to you about how I did it and why I set it the way I did. I know we're all set up. I'll keep this video short because I don't know how much you're going to hear with this wind blowing. But that's same grain trail as before. There's the trap tucked in underneath that hawthorn tree. You see I've got it in the shade, which is just a good habit to get into. Doesn't hurt to put them in a bit of protection, and I think they feel a little bit more comfortable in there anyway, to be honest. But what I've actually done, I'll show you there, I've got a good trail of grain going in through the door. The door is tied open, so it can't shut tonight. I've got a good trail of grain goes around there. The back corner is open. They can go out through that back corner and feed back out the back of the trap here. Idea being, I just want these pigs feeding and really comfortable all around this trap. And when you find evidence of pigs scratching on your trap like that, that's when you know they're comfortable. I want them to come in and be happy to come and go, and each night what I'll do is I'll close that back corner up a bit more. I've had to close it up enough now to hopefully keep the cattle out, because there are cattle in this paddock, and I think they're visiting this site, but they're not taking the grain, well, not much of it anyway. So I've sort of made that hard for a cow to get in there, hopefully to keep them out of the trap while I'm free feeding these pigs. And you'll also notice, which I'll talk to you about later on, but I've got a block of wood there, which down the track, this trip stick here will sit on that block of wood and prop the door open. And you'll also notice I've got no grain in that front corner, none. And that's a deliberate ploy. I don't want pigs in there yet, all right? I want pigs to feed on the back wall. This is where the technique really comes in. You've got to get the pigs to feed on the back wall and line up on the back wall in order to fill your trap to capacity. And then on trap night, we'll put grain down in the front corner, and that's where the the greedy pig will bump the tripwire and pull the stick out from under the door. But I'll talk to you about that on trap night. But for now, that's our trap set up, tucked in there, blends in. I mean, it's still going to be a foreign object or a pig, but it's hidden from other hunters and whatnot, and it's a bit private, so I think the pigs will be very comfortable there. Out in that open paddock out there, like, it's just would stick out like a sore thumb, and I just don't think the pigs would be as comfortable around it as what they would be in here. So this is plan A. I'm going to try it here. If that doesn't work, well, I've always got plan B over there, and I'm going to keep a little bit of grain going over there, but not as much. I want to encourage the pigs to come over here. So it's now Monday, the 28th of July, I think it is, and I started feeding pigs here on Friday. So they're fed Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, 3 nights in a row, bare minimum. Then we bring the trap in. If you want to feed for longer, even better. I'd fully support that. But anyway, I've done enough of this now. I've got a fair idea what's going on. So I've fed for 3 nights. I've brought the trap in, feed through the trap. Now they've got to feed through this trap for 3 more nights before I'm going to set it. 4th night, I'll set the trap. So all in all, you're looking at about a week from the very first lot of grain you put out to the first trap night, if everything goes perfectly. Bit of thought goes into it. It usually does go perfectly, but if you just plonk a trap out in the middle of a paddock, put a bit of grain in it and hope you're going to get pigs, you're going to be very, very disappointed, I can assure you that. Welcome back. Tuesday the 29th of July. Yesterday afternoon, as you're aware, we put this trap in here and we filled it up with grain, and lo and behold, it's all gone. Now there are cattle footprints here. The cattle have been here, but there's a lot of pig footprints with it, and cattle didn't go through that door. I'm pretty sure they didn't go through the back. So all going like clockwork so far. There we go, trail of grain just like yesterday, going across there. Lots of grain in through the door, plenty of grain in the trap. All right, and all on the back wall. Again, remember, we don't put any in that front corner. We'll get to that down the track, but we're teaching them to feed on the back. And you'll also notice that it's not right on the back wall, and that's something I've learnt from just observing the pigs around the trap before, is that if you get it too close to the back wall, what I've seen them do is, if they get a little bit nervy around the trap, they actually come around the back and they try and put their head through there and get it from the outside. So that's something I learnt, so I thought I'd share that with you. Just keep it far enough off the back wall that the only way they're going to get that grain is to either come in through that door or in through that back corner. I've closed that back corner up a little bit more, not a lot, but piglets will still come and go. Actually, most pigs will still come and go through there. And then tomorrow we'll close it up a bit more. I've just put the camera on the post over there, which I'll turn on now. But anyone who's ever had trouble getting pigs in your trap, I hope you just learned something there, that these pigs didn't even balk at that trap, not one bit. First night the trap's there, they've happily gone straight in. They've cleaned up every bit of grain from inside the trap, and the reason why they did that is because we fed them here for a minimum 3 nights in a row. Remember that, a minimum 3 nights in a row before we bring the trap in. All right, and then that's what happens. Once you do that, the pigs are comfortable being here. There's a reward for them to turn up here, and the trap is not really a trap to them at the moment. It's just something that's turned up, just like the grain turned up here last Friday, and the trap's now turned up, but it's not actually a trap. So anyway, I hope you've learnt from that straight away, that if you've ever had trouble getting pigs in your trap, that's probably the reason why. You put the trap there way too early and they balked at it straight off. Back again, Wednesday 30th of July. I'm just walking in onto the trap site. Have a look at the activity up this game trail. Just pig footprints everywhere. We've had a heap of rain overnight, heap more rain today, so they've been here today during the day for sure, because the footprints are pretty fresh. Thought I might have seen them coming in, but not to be. Anyway, as predictable, all gone again. I'll top it up, This is probably the ideal time to put the grain out. It's about 20 to 5 now, so I'm an hour before dark. That's the time I would normally recommend to put your grain out, so you don't encourage birds, because ideally you want to put your grain out, all the birds go to bed, pigs turn up, and all the grain's gone in the morning. That's how you want it to be. There we go, same again, only there's a little bit less on the outside, still plenty up here towards the door. But have a look at how much grain I got in the trap now. Lots of tucker in there. Now what I've done, I've closed up the back corner. So the only way you can get in to get all that grain is through the door. What I've also done is I've lowered that door down to how it will look on trap night. Alright, because before that door was tied up against that top wall, now it's sitting there like that. That's how it'll look on trap night when I've got a stick propping that open. So I just want to encourage them to come in, just how it'll look. Go in there, it's still not set. They can go in, they can come and go as they like. They can get as much of that grain as they want in and out of there. So we're setting them up to fail. Alright, we're going to set these pigs up to catch themselves. So all going well so far. Normally I would set the trap tomorrow night, but unfortunately I'm not going to be here, so I'm going to have to put the grain in here tomorrow morning, which is not ideal, but there's no birds here yet, so I don't think that'll be a problem. Back again, Thursday, 31st of July, and here's our first disappointment. Look at that, pigs didn't turn up last night for whatever reason. I would suggest it's probably because I was late getting here. I didn't get in here till about 4:30, 20 to 5, something like that, and I reckon the pigs were probably in the area and I've hunted them away when I've driven in. But anyway, that's our first little hiccup, but not to worry. I'll just leave everything how it is. I'll drive back out of here now, and I was going to set the trap tomorrow night. Normally you'd set it tonight, but anyway, that plan's gone out the window. I wasn't going to be here anyway, so it was always going to be tomorrow night. But now what I'll do is I'll feed through this trap like this for 2 more nights. So tonight, Thursday night, tomorrow night, Friday night, and provided that they come back and they take all that, and I reckon they will, then I'll set the trap Saturday night. Anyway, first little hiccup. That's the thing when you're dealing with feral animals. It goes like clockwork most of the time, but every now and then you get a spanner in the work. Back again, Friday 1st of August 2025, horse's birthday. That looks a bit better. We had our little hiccup on Wednesday night where the pigs didn't feed, and probably my fault, so put grain out Thursday, and as you can see now, it's all gone. Beautiful. That's what we wanted to see. Obviously they've used the door because they've got no other option now with the back closed up. All the grain gone from in there. Now I reckon I could set that trap tonight. Alright, they've fed 3 out of 4, but because they've missed out on Wednesday night, I'm going to err on the side of caution, and I'm going to feed again tonight, and then I'll set tomorrow night. Just patience always wins, you know. If you do anything in haste, quite often it'll turn around and bite you. Now I've got no doubt I could have set this trap on Monday night because they didn't even balk at it. They just went straight in, and I would have caught a few pigs, no doubt about that. But the longer we feed, the more comfortable we get them around this trap, the more you end up catching. Now I looked at the camera footage from during the week, and the big brown sow with the black spots has been in there. All the piglets have been inside the trap, but the black sow has not been inside the trap, or hadn't up until last time I looked at the camera footage. So I'll take the card out of the camera today and I'll have a look at that. I've now got the camera on video mode, and I want to see that that black sow has been in the trap, and then once I know that all of them have been in, then happy days. And if that black sow decides she doesn't want to go in the trap and doesn't want to get caught, well, I've got a plan for her already. Just quickly before I go, it took me a minute to put that grain out. You can see I've got a bit more miserly out the front now, a little bit less out here. Like instead of having a constant trail, I've just got a few little piles. The only way in is through the door, and a good reward for those who are brave enough to go inside the trap. Big pile over in that back corner, plenty of grain in there. Encourage these pigs to come and go, and I hope you can see how we're sneaking up on them. You know, we've gone from an open trap for a couple of nights, close up the back corner. Now we've got them using the door only, less grain out the front, plenty in the back. You know, it's just we're sneaking up on them a little bit day by day, and then, as I've told you before, tomorrow night we'll set the trap, and Sunday morning hopefully we'll have a heap in there. Thing with dealing with animals, you just never know. Sometimes it can go a little bit pear-shaped on trap night, and you get one pig rush in there and bump the stick and you only catch one. But if you do everything you possibly can to fill the trap like we have done, then you're just maximising the chance of a big catch on the first night. I'm very confident that we'll get them. Stay with me. Here we are, trap night. Got my videographer with me today so I can talk to you and let her worry about doing the video. This is the night we've all been waiting for, right? The night we've been hanging out for. Pigs have been here last night. They've cleaned up all the grain. Now remember, they fed for 2, they missed 1, they fed for 2. And going back to the start of the video, I said I like them to feed 3 nights in a row. Now that might seem that I'm contradicting myself now by only going after 2, but when I looked at the video over there, the camera that's on the post, the night that they missed, they actually turned up about 3 times during the day. So even though they didn't come here that night because I think I disturbed them, they did come 3 times during that day. So yeah, look, technically they haven't fed 3 nights in a row, but they've fed 4 out of 5 through the trap, cleaned up everything. Really happy with the way that they're feeding. So now I've set the trap and we're ready to go. So I'll just quickly show you the difference now on trap night compared to free feed night. You'll see there's no grain out the front. Previously I've had a good trail of grain out here. I've done away with that for trap night. Alright, the only grain that they can get is in the cage. So they've got to go in there. So while we're talking about going into the cage and the trap design, I'll just quickly run you through that. Now this trap is just a portable trap. It's made up of 4 separate panels that one person can handle and set up on their own with ease. It's not that high. I would much prefer it to be at least, I think that's about 1350. I'd much prefer it to be, you know, pushing 1700 high. The height of a steel post, like the height of that, that'd be great. I have had pigs go out over a 1700 high trap before. Knowing the mob that we're after, we've only got 2 sows. I thought 10 piglets originally, but looking at the video footage, I actually counted 11. So we've got 13 in this first mob that we're trying to catch. Hopefully they're the first mob to turn up, because there's only 4 or 5 in the other mob. I want to catch the 2 sows and the piglets first and get rid of the bulk. Then we'll concentrate on the second mob. So going back to the trap design, there's 4 separate panels. Double check everything on trap night. You'll see I've wired it together. So it's not just relying on the pins, it's wired together. The star picket's driven into the ground, and I mean that's not anchored a lot, but it's just enough to stabilize everything. Just double check everything. Double check that your corners are all tight. There's nothing on the trap floor, all right? Because there's nothing more annoying than when you turn up on the day after you've set your trap, the trap's been activated and we've got no pigs. Been down that road and it's really frustrating. Doesn't really matter because you just reset and you catch them the following night anyway. They haven't had a bad experience because they managed to get out of the trap, so they think they can get out of it anyway. I actually caught the same pig twice in one day one time. Got out in the morning, I reset it and I caught it again that afternoon. But I'd corrected where I went wrong, so she didn't get out the second time. So yeah, just 4 panels. It doesn't really matter what your panels are made from. It needs to be fairly heavily constructed because they do play up a bit when they get in there, particularly if you get a half decent bore in there. They'll charge around If you're going to go with mesh, I like 50 by 50 or 50 by 75. Don't go bigger than that, because if you go bigger than that, when they're running around in the trap, they actually get their noses through the mesh and they can do themselves a bit of damage. I mean, obviously this here, those rails will take the front of the pig running around. He's not going to damage himself much on that. But with mesh, they definitely get their noses in and they can knock themselves around. And it's just not a good look for the industry if we've got wounded pigs in a trap waiting for someone to turn up and euthanize them. So just be mindful of that. I love that 50 by 50 mesh. It's strong, contains the pigs really well, and yeah, you won't have any trouble with pigs getting hurt while they're waiting for you to turn up. Now I'll talk about the door. Now this is a really critical part of this whole trapping program, and bear in mind that I'm in the southern tablelands of New South Wales. The traps that we need to work here will work anywhere, I can guarantee you that. A trap that you can get away with in western New South Wales and on the arid inland won't work here. Really important that you take notice of this. This is the most critical part of this whole trapping procedure. Sorry about the wind, guys, it's a horrendous day, and anyway, I'm trying to get through it. So I'll just talk you through the door. I'll just climb in, I might activate it doing so. Now with the open door design, this relies on pigs to come in, feed up the back where we've trained them to feed, alright? That's where we've trained them to feed all week. They know there's going to be grain there. They'll file in, they'll feed up the back. Then what we've done is we've got a little trickle of grain down this side that hasn't been there previously. Remember I said earlier that I deliberately don't put any grain in this front corner on this side until trap night. The reason being, we train them to feed here. We're watching them on the video, they're lining up beautifully. You've got 8 or 10 dozen pigs all lining up feeding there. That's what we want tonight. Eventually, as they move around, one will pick up this little trickle of grain here. He'll come down to this pile. Now that pile, I'm actually going to cover just like so that the pig doesn't see it when he comes through the door, because that's never been there before. I want him to work his way around the feed line and get to that. Now to get to that grain, he's got to push through that wire. So if you want to put that camera on the door, you'll see when he pushes that wire, the door activates and all the others are still feeding on the grain at the back of the trap, and he's caught all his mates. Perfect, that's what we want. Now going to the door, you'll also see in here that door fits in flush, like it's recessed into that bit of steel framework there. That's so a pig can't get their nose in behind it. Add to that, I've got a big strong magnet down in that corner. There's the magnet. That door shuts. That magnet holds it there, and it takes a bit to open it. Alright, now I know you're all saying, oh, my mate's got a push in trap, they just, you know, it stays set all the time, and the pigs just, you feed them and they push in. Waste of time, absolute waste of time. This ground around here, anywhere along the Great Divide, anywhere in this range country, the soil is more fertile. We're not in the arid plains where you know, everything's starving most of the year round. Around here there's an abundance of feed pretty much all year round, unless we're in drought, and we haven't been in drought for a number of years now. So if you make it hard for pigs, and if you make them push to get into your trap, they'll just walk away and go and get a feed somewhere else. They don't have to work to get a feed, they'll just walk away. So that's why we go with an open door trap. That is an absolute, not negotiable, have to have for trapping along the range, along the Great Divide. The heart-shaped trap, or a trap that's got a door that's permanently like that, at that angle, and pigs push in, you'll get the odd pig for sure. But in all the years I've been trapping, prior to having magnets on the door, in all the years I've been trapping, and hundreds of pigs that I've trapped, and I've always got cameras on the trap, I've only ever seen one pig push into the trap when mum and the other babies were caught. That was one little piglet. I've never seen any other pig push into my trap even when they could. So if you think you're going to catch more pigs with a trap where they can just continually file in and catch themselves, you're up for disappointment, I'll tell you that. As I said, an open door trap is absolutely not negotiable for this part of the world. And an open door trap will work anywhere because it's easy. There's no restriction on the pig to get in there. They just walk in, and we've trained them to walk in, and they know the grain's going to be at the back. And anyway, I've got a camera over there on video mode. We'll video it tonight, or I reckon these pigs will turn up this afternoon. They've been coming and going regularly during the day. We're only about, I don't know, 1:30 in the afternoon now. I'd say we'll have pigs caught in this cage before 4:30 this afternoon. So depending on what the weather does, I might even come back and just check it, but I won't actually drive into the trap. I'll come in a different way, and I might come and peer over that hill that you can see up there to the northeast. We've got a good southerly wind blowing. I can get to that hill, I can get to that vantage point, I can see what's in the trap from up there. I'm 150 meters away, and then if the trap hasn't been activated, I can just sneak away and come back tomorrow morning. If it has, I can potentially deal with the pigs in the trap this afternoon, so they're not in here overnight, and there'll be nothing to stop me from resetting the trap again this afternoon. And if we don't get all the mob, I can catch the balance of them tonight, or I might get another mob turn up and catch them. You can certainly trap twice in the one day. There's no problem with that, provided you've got enough pigs turning up. So keep that in mind. An open door trap is not negotiable. Now, another little tip with your trip stick, you'll see I've got that on that block of wood. That's just sitting on that block of wood. It's got a little angle on it that way. And by putting the angle on it, not only does that make it easy to activate and slip off that block of wood, but it actually opens up your doorway a little bit, so the pigs can come in there without any problem at all. I've also moved the trip stick. I used to put it out on that front corner, but what I actually found was that makes that opening there a bit bigger, and some pigs would walk in on the wrong side of the tripwire, activate the tripwire, and then you only catch one or two. So by moving the trip stick back, it's about halfway along the door. This opening here is quite tight. That one there is quite large. That's where we want them to come in. Feed on the back, as I've said a number of times. So I just got asked the question of what the tripwire actually is. Well, it's only tie wire that you buy in a roll at the produce store. Pretty fine tie wire. Apparently it's hard to see on that video. Now, I've also tied it at this point on the trap. And the reason I've put it there is I want all that area there to catch pigs. All right, I've pretty much got the whole trap area to catch pigs. I've got to have a little area on that side so I can put drain over there and give the pig enough room to move and to push the wire. Now, I've got that area that big because I'm trying to catch a big mob. However, if I was only trying to catch a couple, like if we've only got the balance of a mob to catch, that trip, I don't need this whole area here to catch pigs. What actually happens then, they can come in, they can have a feed, and they can walk back out without activating the trap. So that's where we put a bit of thought into it, and a bit of homework. And if I'm only trying to catch 2 or 3, the last couple in the mob, that tripwire will run from there over to the back wall, about here, and then that only gives me that little corridor for a pig to come in. And I only need that to get a couple of pigs in there. And the minute they move sideways, so the tripwire would dissect that grain about there. The minute they try to get to that grain, they bump it. But you only need an area that big to catch a couple, but to catch 13 or whatever, you need as much trap area as you can possibly give yourself. Yeah, just put a bit of thought into the height of your tripwire, where you put your tripwire, your catch area depending on how many you're after, and you're just constantly thinking. Anyway, I hope that's given you a bit of an insight into how this whole thing works, why we feed on the back wall, like I said earlier in the week, and that's to get the pigs to line up here. That's how you catch big number of pigs. You train them to feed at the back of the trap. So anyway, I think that's all I need to do here now. Magnet on the door, tripstick set, and I put the tripstick on the block of wood, because if you just put it on the ground, just the weight of the door pushing down on the tripstick, it'll actually dig into the dirt a little bit, and you can bump that tripwire a fair bit. So I'll just activate that and I'll show you how easy that is. Like if I'm a pig trying to get to that grain, I only just barely touch that and that door's gone. So that's how you want it. You want it light enough that a pig can activate it easily, but not that light that the wind will blow it and knock it over. And never ever drive into me trap, never, because for argument's sake there's 13 pigs in this mob that I'm targeting. There's a black sow that's a little bit reluctant to go in. The other sow and all the piglets have been in, I've seen them. There's a black sow a little bit reluctant. Now if I catch her babies and she's on the outside, she's not going anywhere. When I turn up, she'll be lying on the outside of the trap, all the others will be caught inside the trap. Now if I drive in here, just come bowling in here making a noise, she'll hear me coming and she'll take off. If I park some distance away, get the wind right, as I said, sneak in over the brow of that hill and have a look. Now if she's on the outside of the trap, I can shoot her from 150 metres with a 223 or something, shoot her in the head, she's done, the others are contained, and then I just come down and I deal with them with the 22. However, having said that, if I've got 2 pigs on the outside, I'll still shoot them. Because if I shoot one and kill it instantly, like you should do, the other one's not going to run far because it'll be running on its own. And it's going to say, hang on, all the mates are back there. I'm just going to, it'll probably run 20 or 30 yards and then look back to think, where's everyone else? That's when you deal with the second pig. However, if you've got 3 or more and you shoot one, you've got 2 to run, and they'll keep each other running and they'll keep going. So that's my golden rule. 2 on the outside, shoot. 3 or more, don't shoot. Just sneak down or just walk down here. If they run off, just let them run off without scaring them too much. Deal with the pigs in the trap, reset your trap, and you'll catch those 3 at a later date, probably the next night. Pretty confident we'll catch pigs. Do we get all 13 or do we get half of them? Time will tell. I know, it's about 5 o'clock. I've just walked in here to have a look at this trap. There's a bit of commotion down there. There's pigs in the trap. I can't see how many, but there doesn't look to be a lot. I can't see any pigs around the outside. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to race back to the car. I'll just grab a 22, I'll go down, I'll deal with those pigs that are in there, and I'll rebait that trap and I'll reset it this afternoon. So we'll go 2 catches in the one afternoon. Not sure how many's in there. The big brown sow's in there. Looks like the black sow is in there, and a few piglets. The brown sow's just spotted me. Anyway, they're all pretty settled at the moment, but that's about to change because I'm going to have to walk around there and try and deal with these critters. Looks like a decent catch. Well, I've just woken up to the fact that I'm here. Good thing is I've got that black sow. She was the one that I thought I might not get. Anyway, a few in there. I won't stir things up anymore. I'll deal with these and I'll report back. You might remember that yesterday when I set that trap, it was about 1:30 and the pigs have been turning up about 4:30 of an afternoon on the camera. So I was pretty confident that I'd have pigs yesterday afternoon, and the weather turned absolutely horrendous. Heavy rain, strong wind. But I was so sure I'd have pigs, I thought, bugger it, I'm going to go in and check that trap, which I did. I only had 4 piglets in it. So I dealt with them yesterday afternoon at 5 o'clock. Pretty confident that the others would still be around and that they'd definitely come back because they've been feeding so well. I just reset the trap at 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Here's the result. 2 sows, 7 piglets. That's that whole mob. There was 11 piglets and those 2 sows in the mob, and we've got the lot. And that's the benefit of feeding and being patient and just continuing on, not doing anything in haste. And when you get them feeding that well, they just keep coming back to the trap. And that's the result. That's how you get 100%. Just while I think of it, when I was talking about the trap design yesterday, I didn't mention the actual area. That front panel is only about 2.5 meters, and these goat panels that I'm using, I think they're 2.7. So it has got a little taper on it, because obviously it's 2.5 wide at the front, 2.7 wide at the back, but that's okay. The reason you don't really want to trap any bigger than that, hard enough to shoot them in that little area. Like, they get in there, they play up a bit, they're running around. And the other thing that is a definite is you've got to have a square trap, because then that gives you corners, and you'll see that all these pigs pretty much are dead in the corners, because that's where they run to and they stand, and that gives you an opportunity to shoot them. So if you make a big trap, and then particularly if you don't have corners in it, like I've seen a few traps where the net traps and things like that, big round traps, I can just see them being an absolute nightmare trying to shoot pigs in there running around. They're not going to stand there and shake your hand, I can tell you that. So just bear that in mind when you build your trap. Make sure it's square, make sure you got corners in it. I always stand here at the corner near the gate, because that's probably going to be your weakest point if they bounce off that gate and spring it or whatever. So I stand at the gate. They generally accumulate in those back corners, and then I just shoot them in the corners. I did have a couple of these piglets come and stand at my feet, so I shot them just there. But just bear that in mind. Square trap, small area, makes the actual job of shooting them a lot easier. And while we're talking about coming in on the trap, best if you just come in on your own. Don't go bringing a crowd of people with you. You know, I know everyone's interested in all that, and that's fine, it's all well and good, but bring them in after you've shot the pigs, because you just don't want it chaotic. I mean, it gets pretty bloody chaotic as it is. Just be discreet as you can be, just be professional, come in, get the job done, and then you can sit back and talk about it for a week after that. But definitely don't bring multiple people. Definitely don't bring dogs or anything like that in, because that just stirs things up even more. I just sneak in here, check the trap out. Obviously there was none on the outside, because we had them all on the inside. But yeah, if there had been a pig on the outside, I could have dealt with it, could have shot it first and then worried about the ones in. But another question too that often gets raised is, does the blood in the trap deter the pigs? And it's a bit of a wives' tale actually, because I've heard all these negative thoughts about, or negative ideas about trapping, and you know, they, you know, some get caught and then the others learn and they take off. Well, we've put that wives' tale to bed, because I caught 4 piglets last night at 4:30, reset the trap at 5, and got the balance of the mob on the same night. So no, they don't wise up, because we've done the feeding properly. If we hadn't done the feeding properly, potentially they would. Does the blood deter the pigs? Definitely not. I've trapped multiple nights in a row, trap full of blood. You'll see there's a big pile of blood that's come out of one of them in there. A couple of good piles of blood. I'll just leave that in there. If anything, I reckon that's an attractant, certainly not a deterrent. So no, blood doesn't deter them. Soon half the mob get caught doesn't deter them, provided you've done all your feeding right. So I hope you've seen the benefit in being patient and doing that, you know, that long feeding period, and that's the result that you get. So there we are. There's our mob. 11 piglets, 2 sows, all done and dusted. That's the mob that we were targeting. That's the mob we've got. Now, a couple of questions that people often ask me. What do you do with the pigs when you catch them? Well, first and foremost, they've got to be dead in the trap. All right, no pig ever comes out of my trap alive. And if you want to learn how to trap pigs with the idea you're going to fatten them up for Christmas, please don't use my trapping method to do that. That's illegal. Certainly something I don't condone. And yeah, pig in captivity or transporting a feral pig is an offence, and rightly so. there's enough of these bloody things getting around now. We certainly don't need to be taking them to a new location or fattening them up with the idea we're going to eat. I never take pigs off the property if I can help it. The reason being, you just, by leaving them on the property where you've caught them, you're minimising the chance of spreading disease. Now that we've been through that trapping process, and thanks for staying with me for the journey from day one right through to the end, just thought I'd do a little summary now of how that went. Things that went really well and things that didn't go so well. Not much failed, really. I mean, there was the one afternoon that they missed feeding. I think that was about Wednesday night. And I take the rap for that because I had been feeding earlier in the day, mainly because of work commitments and things like that. Generally, I would say feed late in the afternoon so you don't encourage birds onto your feed, and that's one less problem that you've got to start with. But for me, it just didn't kind of work that way this week with the commitments that I already had. So I was feeding earlier in the day, which then encourages your pigs to feed earlier in the day, because when they arrive late afternoon, there's food there and they don't get disturbed, and they get earlier each day as a rule, and that's sort of evidenced by the cameras. So there was the one afternoon they didn't feed. Like I said, I take the blame for that. I got there too late. I was 4:30, 5 o'clock. When I looked at the camera, the pigs had actually been there at 3:30 that afternoon. And anyway, they picked it up straight away. 3 times the following day, they were there feeding and looking for grain. So then we did 2 more feeds through the night, and then we set the trap. So that all corrected itself, and that all ended up pretty well on par with how it should have. The only other little mishap that we had was the bloody camera that I put on the trap site. I put it on video mode and it missed a lot of action. Unfortunately, I don't know, it was a brand new camera, brand spanking new. I took it out of the packet that day. I set it at about the same range I normally would, but it didn't pick up a lot. It picked up a few things, didn't pick up much at night, only pigs that were very close to it. And unfortunately, we didn't get either of the 2 catches. We didn't get the first 4 piglets that got caught, and we didn't get the main mob that got caught. For whatever reason, I can't explain that, but it would have been really good if we could have seen what happened. All I can think of with the first catch, where we got the 4 piglets, is I did see that the pigs arrived from the opposite direction that afternoon. They came in from the west, and they have been coming from the east. And when they come from the east, it lines them up perfectly with that grain trail and that door, and they just continue on, and they're going straight into the trap. So when they came from the west, most of the pigs were around the back of the trap when the first 4 went in, and the next video I have is 4 pigs in the trap and nothing else. So we didn't actually get to capture the catch. Then I reset, as you know, at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, got out of there, came back this morning, Sunday morning, and the balance of the mob were there in the trap. But again, for whatever reason, that camera didn't get it. But anyway, you saw the pigs in the trap when I arrived, and I put it on the GoPro, and I stood back a bit because it does get fairly chaotic. So I didn't want to get up there and stir things up and you know, make it any more chaotic than it needed to be. But they were the only couple of things that went wrong. And what went well was pretty much everything else, because put food out Friday night, they ate Friday night. They ate the 3 nights in a row. We brought the trap in, we set the trap up. They didn't balk at the trap, they went straight into it. And that's very, very predictable. In fact, just thinking off the top of my head, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 trapping jobs recently prior to that, and it's all been the same result on every one of them. So I think I'm well over 55 pigs or something in this local area, and there's 1 pig that I haven't caught. So that's a pretty good strike rate. And anyone tells you that trapping doesn't work, well, you've seen for yourself, it does work. And if it doesn't work, it's not the fault of the trap, or it's the fault of the procedure and the fault of the person that's doing the trapping. So the good thing about it, a couple of highlights too that I want to point out, is that I trapped those pigs in a paddock that had livestock in there. There's 20 odd cows just calving in there now. No impact on them whatsoever. we trapped through some bloody horrendous weather. It just blew and it rained almost every day. A lot of other methods would have been out the window. You wouldn't have been able to do a lot of other control options through that weather, but you can still trap. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of positives to trapping. Now, there's no impact on the environment. We didn't catch a non-target animal, but if we had it done, it's just a matter of opening the gate and letting it out. Very rarely do I ever catch a non-target animal. I think in all the years I've been doing it, I've had a couple of wombats that have obviously been caught, but when I turned up, they dug out. I have caught a couple of sheep over the years when I've been trapping in paddocks that have had sheep in there, but again, that's not really a negative. You just open the door and let them out. If you look at something like 1080 poisoning, which I'm dead against personally, and anyone who's ever seen an animal die from 1080 poisoning, I can tell you now, it's a bloody horrific death, and the powers that be will tell you, oh no, the way 1080 works is it shuts down the nervous system and they don't feel pain. Well, the animals I've seen with 1080 in their gut are not feeling pain. I'm a poor judge of pain because they suffered, and I don't like 1080 poisoning. You wouldn't have been able to 1080 poison in that paddock because of the cattle. You wouldn't have been able to 1080 poison in that wet weather because the wet weather would have diluted the poison and made it inoperable. You would have had a hard time recovering all the pigs, and you do have a legal obligation to recover the carcasses if you're poisoned because of the 1080 residue that's in that carcass. And there's a lot of cover. It probably didn't look that bad where we were, but down that creek there's a lot of bulrushes and razor grass, and it's, yeah, really heavy cover. Blackberries, you'd never recover the carcasses if they got in there and died. They'd be close to the creek, potentially contaminating that waterway. So all in all, I think we've shown firsthand the benefits of trapping over any other option. In fact, I think you could combine all other options. You could combine 1080 poisoning, recreational hunting, pig doggers, if you allow them on your place, and none of them would have got as good a result, or all of them together would not have got as good a result as what we got with that trapping program. And like I said, that trapping program, that system that I've developed is foolproof. It works like that pretty much every single time. The only other thing that we didn't get that I would have liked to have got, surprisingly enough, is a pig on the outside of the trap to show you how they hang around on the outside of the trap, and then you can shoot that pig on the outside of the trap and deal with the ones inside the trap. But I mean, fortunately, we caught them all. We didn't have to deal with any outside the trap, but that's just another option that you have. Like I said, you've got no contamination of the environment. Just a perfect system that works really well if you follow that procedure. Not much more I can say about it, I don't think. Yeah, like, just hope you liked that video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed doing it. It's the first time for me, as I said in the intro. See how it goes. If I get a few people like it, then we might do another one on another form of trapping of a different type of animal, or maybe a more comprehensive one. But there's more pigs in that paddock, but there's no point me continuing this video because I'm only going to do everything identical to what you've already seen, and I'm only going to make you sit there and watch me and listen to me for a bit longer, and I'm not going to teach you any more than what I already have. But I've got no doubt that I'll trap the rest of the pigs that are in that paddock. We got 100% of the target mob, and I'll get 100% of the next target mob. So thanks again. Really hope you've learned something. Hope I've helped you combat your pig problem. And for those people who have got a pig trap, get it out, get it in the paddock, get it in operation. Involve your kids. Kids absolutely love it. They'll bounce out of bed on trap night, I can tell you that, or the morning after trap night. Everyone that I've taught along the way, and my main role in all of this is I teach landholders how to trap their pigs, so they're not relying on me to come and do it all the time. They then become self-sufficient. Then I move on to another job. Sometimes I get repeat work. Sometimes they say, oh, I haven't got time to do it, and then I'll go and do the whole program for them. But there's too much pig trapping for me to trap every pig in South East New South Wales. I need to get more recruits, more people on the ground doing it. And I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to do it by way of this video. And yeah, collectively we might make an impact. A couple of other things I just briefly want to touch on before I do leave you finally. Don't ever trap pigs with the intent of fattening a couple up for Christmas. All right, that's not on. Every pig that I ever catch is dead when it comes out of my trap. Do not ever allow people to take live pigs out of the trap. Generally, it's a bit of an afterthought. They see the pigs in the trap. They're not prepared at home, and it's highly illegal anyway, just for the record. If I knew that someone had pigs in captivity, I'd have no hesitation in putting them in, because that's how these little satellite populations of pigs appear. Someone gets a bright idea they're going to take one home and fatten it up for Christmas. It gets out, and then you've got another population to deal with. So don't even think about doing that, and please don't think about trapping pigs to relocate them to a different area so that you can go and hunt them closer to home, because I know a bit of that goes on, not so much with trapping but more with other methods of catching pigs. I'm not in favour of any of that stuff. Transporting a feral pig is an offence. I think it carries, or it used to, about a $22,000 fine, and a pig in captivity used to be about a $4,000 fine. You can buy a lot of ham from your local butcher, go and support him, get your meat from him, and don't damage the environment anymore by moving pigs around. So yeah, just thought I'd touch on that. Not a big fan of authorities, but I think we've got to support them in some way. Anyway, thanks again. Hope you learned something. Talk soon.